The secrets to life, the genetic code of what we eat, and the Chinese regime is stealing it. In this special report, we look at how the Chinese Communist Party has infiltrated American agriculture, what it means here at home, around the world, and how to get to the root of it. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Spying and seeds, an unusual combination, one that's unlikely to spring to mind when the topic of stealing secrets is brought up. Other more talked about issues, like stealing military secrets, may come across as no-brainers. But plodding through a field for a single seed? And yet, there have been cases. Let's look at the state of Iowa.
They did find and arrest a Chinese national, over 10 years ago, out stealing seeds in a field. And it seems silly, but if you can get 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different varieties of seed, now you've got the ability to not only reverse engineer that seed's tolerance to various pesticides or insects.
That's Ross Kennedy, founder of Fortis Analysis. He goes on to explain the value of each seed.
If you can get a hold of the original seed itself, the genetic code is in that germplasm of that seed, and you're able to break that down and begin to essentially reverse engineer the technological processes that have been done to modify the DNA of that seed.
He likens a single genetically modified seed to a little biological computer. With that in mind, that biocomputer's genetic code can be modified, used to carry out specific tasks in a seed. For many seeds, the most desirable traits include resistances to outside factors that might harm crop yield. Problems like corn borer insects, rootworm, or glyphosate, a weed killer and herbicide.
And that allows farmers to be able to cultivate using a mix of seeding rate, mix of chemicals, a mix of fertilizers and pesticides and all these other things to help control as much as they can the variability that comes from pest, from lack of rain or too much rain, lack of fertility, and be able to produce a crop reliably on a year in and year out basis.
Given all those different uses, people and countries have been keen to steal that code.
We're also able to reverse engineer the ability to have that seed take longer to produce, where it may yield more, and you can put it in an area where there's a lot more heat and water available. You also would be able to reverse engineer what's called short season corn, which is 85 or 90-day corn that would be grown in a place like the Dakotas or Minnesota, where you have a much shorter growing season, and so that seed will mature much more rapidly.
For example, China could then take that seed and apply it to areas that are more arid, areas that present more challenges for agriculture. But let's take a step back. Who's behind the creation of these genetically modified seeds in the first place?
Globally, it's called the Big Six, and the Big Six is really about the Big Four, because a couple are Big Three, even because a couple of these companies have merged, like Bayer and Monsanto. Dow and DuPont have merged their agriculture and chemical operations, so all the R&D, of course, is merged with it. China does now own Syngenta, which was a Swiss company, has a very large U.S. footprint out in the Research Triangle of North Carolina. But we're really down to 3 or 4 of these big companies.
And those secrets to life are very valuable.
So if you're able to, quote unquote, crack the code of a genetically modified organism, then you would be able to steal hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of intellectual property.
Normally, how do genetically modified seeds get from labs to farmers?
Those big companies are the ones that do the billion-dollar genetic research and really devise and develop the ability. But then what they do is they sell that germplasm, they sell their seed strains to other companies that license that technology from them. They license the seed genetics and they mix it up with their own to produce maybe their own proprietary hybrids. Then you would need to get access to a seed plot or something that's run by one of those companies. So a very, very small group of companies at the top that control a great deal of the food production of this country from a grains and oilseed side.
But some people and countries have gotten tired of shelling out billions to license the seeds.
And so being able to, intercept technology from one of them, or be able to get access to some of that in a way that they didn't even know it. Now you're talking about a 1.4 billion mouth to feed market in a place like China that used to have to buy American and European genetic technology. And now they have the means to do their own and race ahead and provide that to the rest of the world, and undermine U.S. efforts in that way as well. So it becomes a lot more complicated when you've only got just a couple of companies that really control all of this.
So how is China's seed theft being felt in the U.S.? First, it's important to understand how the Chinese regime views food security. Kennedy notes China
a very peculiar relationship with food security. It is an enormous emphasis in that country. It always has been. I don't think anybody forgets the famines, of the early, the mid to late part of the 20th century.
And because of that emphasis,
in that country, possessing the means to increase their own domestic food security is job number one. And lying, stealing, bartering, whatever it takes to get that technology, China has proven willing to do.
But beyond China's own borders,
it allows them to go to other places like Africa, for example, where the access to and the means of growing more reliable, more robust, more modern type crops and utilizing more modern cropping methods would go a long ways towards helping lift Africa out of poverty.
Kennedy points out that China's global infrastructure strategy, the Belt and Road Initiative, also applies to agriculture.
You could also do Belt and Road with food and with energy. And it's a massive diplomatic lever in a lot of places where China could come in and say, hey, we can give the farm equipment, the methods, the machinery, and this very expensive intellectual property. We can provide this all to you to lift yourselves up out of food issues or food poverty. But we want access to these critical minerals, or we want to build a military base on your shoreline, or whatever it may be. It's a very powerful lever.
As to why it's such a powerful lever,
U.S. says, hey, we'll give you some bags of wheat or some bags of rice to help feed yourselves. This is China saying, we're not going to give you a fish, we're going to teach you to fish, but we want something very valuable in return. And so that is one way in which internationally theft of American agriculture intellectual property has a direct line to undermining American diplomatic and national security efforts worldwide.
But as for just how much pull that gives, it's important to note the difference between seeds and infrastructure. Take a bridge, for example, a structure that can last for decades. But many seeds might be good for only one crop.
But when you're talking about crops, particularly genetically modified crops, at least with grains, these are annual crops. Okay, so once they're harvested, you don't take the corn seeds and put them back into the soil. They're not useful in that. You have to have new seed that was grown specifically to be seed for a full crop.
That gives the Chinese regime a lot of power.
Also giving them the seed that's only good once and only really keeps in condition in a bag for a year or two. Now you have the ability to every single year take your ball and go home if you don't like the way they're playing. And so it's a variant of debt trap diplomacy, but it's also one that hits immediately and hits very, very close to home in a way that maybe we're repossessing your bridge or your railroad does not.
Now, as to whether China can weaponize those seeds against the U.S., that's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for more than a year. Here's what to look out for in our second half. Seeds can also be weaponized, used to target America's crops, or even as leverage in diplomacy. Ross Kennedy breaks it down further. The full episode is available on our partner platform at Bog TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow.
Every once in a while, something comes along so masterful, it leaves you in awe. So inspiring, it changes your life. So beautiful, you wish it would never end. When that happens, it's something not to be missed. Shen Yun, an all-new production every year.
The performance was enchanting.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
It touches you. It really does.
The expertise of the dancers was really, really strong.
To know that it was live music was really fantastic.
We didn't want to miss this.
Make sure you see it.
Have to come. Life-changing.